All right, so let's just jump right in. I'm like getting my trigger finger ready here.
That's it. Look.
What's up, fam? It's your boy Demuir here, purveyor of all sounds underground. Thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel today, where I'll be talking about a topic that came from a community member on my Discord server. And the topic is the whole question about VSTs and hardware. Can they coexist in a studio? And I have some pretty pointed thoughts on that one. But before we jump into things, what I need from you is that SLC. Hit subscribe, like, comment, and more importantly, hit the notifications bell to stay in touch with the new videos that we have up and coming. All right, so let's just jump right in. I'm like getting my trigger finger ready here. So point number one is, can VSTs and synth hardware and outboard gear coexist? And the simple answer here is yes, but it comes with a caveat in the form of a question of, it depends on what sound you're going for. I'll try and find some pictures of my previous studio before I moved it here, but I largely had, I went from having outboard gear to being all in the box again with Reason and reintroducing myself to Logic, and now having this. And I've actually recently acquired another synth, the Hydra-synth, polysynth, and it's really a great piece of kit, but it depends on the sound you're going for. And over time, my sound has evolved to needing both VSTs and hardware to achieve what I'm looking to achieve in my sound. Point number two. So by having them coexist, there is a definite advantage here, and I think it simply expands creativity. There are certain limitations that both VSTs and hardware present. So as an example, VSTs only give you so much analog-ish capability. It's not really analog, and that's where I put the ish on it. It all just comes down to how things are emulated. Whereas with outboard gear like my Moog Sub 37, for example, or my Arteria Matrix Brute, I know they are vividly different in terms of the sound textures I get from them, depending on how long I've turned them on and how cold the units are. It's just obvious. You can hear it in the sound. And I'm not like some crazy sound designer guru. I'm just going for what sounds pleasing to my ears. So from a creative perspective, those limitations from my perspective, again, present different opportunities. And I'll expand on that a bit more before we close out the video. Point number three, just to dovetail off of the second point, VSTs have an amazing ability to recall the things you've done uniquely, because it's all in the box and you turn a knob and you can automate things, it'll capture it. Now, it's not to say that these things are not available on hardware. You can certainly take a sound on hardware, modify it, save it, depending on how much space you have in the unit, or if they've made empty banks like to give you that ability. But previously that wasn't there before, and you had to leave the hardware on the settings, getting the sound that you like. And personally for me, because I'm not a crazy sound designer, I take a very serendipitous approach to my outboard gear. Whatever I tweak on there is what I get, and that's what's going to get printed in the mix, and it's done. I'm not trying to recall and say, oh, I moved the cutoff or resonance this way. Like, I'm not that dude. But VSTs certainly allow you to get into those types of positions. And point number four. So with hardware or outboard gear, I just think the sounds that are offered and the limitations of, the analog or filter components that are in the machine provide certain limitations that are just amazing, and unfortunately you cannot recreate on a VST. I'm not a sound designer expert, as I said previously, but I'm, in terms of what I hear and the quality that comes out of certain synths just gets me straight away, where in a VST it's a completely different experience. And I'm sure you can get to something that's close or similar through some, creative EQing, adding certain preamps or plugins to the VST. But I just like what comes directly out of these things. Like the Matrix behind me, I did a song called Philippine Sunrise. And that gliding, rising sound that's in that song all comes from that machine. And it's rich, it's thick, it's just no way I could have gone in and said, okay, let me put up, Native Instruments, Massive, for example, and figure out how I could create that sound. Like, I literally heard the sound, I was able to get it out of that machine, along with a whole bunch of other things, and I know I just cannot replicate them as a VST. So that worked out very well in that case. All right, and point number 5, before we close things out, I want to give some examples of how having both VSTs and hardware coexisting in your studio present really cool things. So my remix of Kenny Dope's All I'm Asking by, I think it's featuring Access. It's a tune that is regularly getting played by Jamie Jones and Local Dice. They've presented it on Beatport streaming, I think, with Microsoft Surface. And I had asked about that track, and people are like, yo, what synth did you use to, rock the bass like that? And it's all in the box. It's Native Instruments Massive, I believe. That wobble sounds super dope out of that piece of kit. And it just worked well at the time because I was at my previous studio. I didn't have a lot of outboard gear, and it just gave me the sound and feel that I wanted. So that whole project, that whole song is all VST stuff. Now, looking at another project called From Black to Technicolor on Music for Freaks. It's basically an album I did, but they wanted to split it up into 2. Justin Harris over there, and that was completely, most of it was done using Behringer's DeepMind 12 synth. My cousin had just sent it to me from Phoenix, and I just dove right in. Tracks like Party, How Beautiful You Are really present certain sounds that I know I could not replicate as a VST, and I still play those records now, and it's like a night and day thing in terms of the rich and thickness of the song. So again, it all comes back to my first point. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. And I gotta say, the two just happily coexist, and how you execute on things really just comes down to what you're looking to get out of your sound and being able to do that rather consistently for whatever project it is, so people can uniquely identify you and attach you to that sound. And there you have it. Those are my thoughts on VSTs and hardware coexisting in your studio. Let me know your thoughts on this one. I would love to hear from you. I usually join the conversation within 48 hours of presenting these videos, so let me know what you think. And the conversation doesn't have to stop there. Please check out my Discord server as well as my Patreon community, where I offer unique and exclusive content on that platform. Much love and respect to you. Peace.